This ghost has their own fenced area.
Stay off my lawn.
How strange. Do you see this area? Nothing is growing. And the ground differs from everywhere else in the cemetery. Nothing is growing here. Goodness. It almost looks like the ground is saturated. Everything else is as dry as a bone. Dry grass everywhere. Area with nothing growing. We have an absolutely crushed and destroyed grave right next to it. It almost looks like an act of rage. This looks like an act of violence. You're theorizing the ghost of this place did that.
I don't like this ghost. I don't like how close this ghost.
Something is going on here. And it took it out on this headstone. This one got too close. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we have a spooky and scary investigation ahead at the hometown of the Dalton Gang, a group of bad guys from the Old West. The Daltons were cousins of the James Younger Gang, but were much younger than them and operated in the years 1890 to 1892. And during this reign of terror, they robbed trains, held up stagecoaches, and rustled cattle. The Dalton Gang was known for their cruelty and inhumanity, showing no compassion for innocent townspeople. This is especially reviling considering the Dalton boys began their career as lawmen, sheriffs and deputies entrusted with the keys to the jail. But the villainous Daltons quickly betrayed that trust and became the most trigger-happy of evildoers. But their treachery came to a crossroads on October 5th, 1892, when the gang decided to rob the citizens of their old hometown in Coffeyville, Kansas. But this time, they decided to hold up two banks at the same time. And so, they rode into town confidently that morning. But what they didn't know is the hitching post behind the bank had been removed. And so the bandits had to use a different hitching post in an alley across the street. And while walking down that alley, someone recognized them and slipped away to warn the town. The gang proceeded in pulling off their grand double heist. But when they walked back outside with their bags of money, they saw the entire population of Coffeyville standing there with guns. You see, while they were robbing the banks, word spread through the town, and everyone ran to the hardware store and bought rifles. In a split second, a huge gunfight exploded, with hundreds of shots being fired in every direction, until the buildings of the town were turned into Swiss cheese. Several of the townspeople were cut down in the street. With little cover to be found, the Dalton Gang tried to run down the alley to their hitching post, but a crowd of the town citizens followed after them, firing an onslaught of bullets that wiped out the gang before they could ever mount their horses. All that was left was their bags of stolen money blowing in the wind. The dirt path where they died is now known as Dalton Alley, and people say it's haunted. The Dalton Gang was then buried in the town cemetery, which we will be investigating today. And we will be using the SB7 Ghost Box device. Investigators note, the town cemetery also holds the grave of Frank Dalton, a U.S. Marshal gunned down in the line of duty in 1887. He was the older brother of the Dalton boys, but had no part in their evil acts. The only survivor of the 1892 robbery was Emmett Dalton. He was shot 23 times, but amazingly, he was fine. And he was pardoned in the early part of the 20th century. He then moved to Hollywood, California, where he became a writer and actor in Western movies. There were 2 other members of the Dalton Gang who were waiting several miles outside town with fresh horses. And they managed to escape to Oklahoma, where they started a new branch of the Dalton Gang called the Wild Bunch. And they continued with many new escapades. In the 20th century, the Dalton Gang's original hideout was discovered in a tiny town called Meade, Kansas, over 100 miles away. It was an inconspicuous-looking house on a tall hill. But beneath the hill was a system of tunnels and chambers, much like the Bat Cave beneath Wayne Manor, used for stealthy entrances and escapes. The complex is now a tourist attraction. Also popular with tourists is the Dalton Defenders Museum, honoring the heroic townspeople killed or maimed during the Daltons' last ride. Also in Coffeyville, the town square where the 2 banks are still standing, and the original hardware store from that day, which is still operating as an Ace Hardware store today. And between the downtown buildings, the original horse stable, where the county marshal valiantly appeared from, guns blazing, until he went down in a blaze of glory and fell face first into the dirt at the end of Dead Man's Alley. But we are on our way now to the town cemetery. So hang on to your hats, compadres, as we attempt to communicate and have a conversation with ghost robbers. I believe it's over this way. Kind of a kooky place here. Kind of strange. All these abandoned railroad cars here. This is the resting place of the participants of the Coffeyville gun battle. I heard a pop, pop, pop. The Dalton raid. Well, we've only been here a few minutes and we're already hearing strange noises. I think it's time to get out the spirit box. You ready to activate? Hello. Well, if you have any questions for the Dalton Gang, it's now or never. I'm Tom. We just came to visit you today. We see you have your hitching post here. You see, when the gang was buried, They originally didn't even have a grave marker. Somebody that knew them put up their hitching post just to remember where the Dalton gang was buried. Yeah, we have a question. Why'd you do it? Did you hear a voice say because?
Yes.
Very funny. Is Bob there? Whoa!
Oh.
Oh my. Been over 125 years. Yeah. Since the Dalton raid on this town.
Are you guys still haunting this town?
Oh, we keep hearing noises. What was that? Is someone else here I don't know about? Oh my goodness.
Ooh, that was definitely a man's voice. Bob, Grant, Bill, say your name if you're there. Sounded like Bill to me. Bill Power, is that you?
Guys, we're hearing lots of thuds and thumps.
It's me. I just said it's me.
Oh, wow. I heard that.
To signify the greed of these cowboys.
Guys, we're gonna be back in a minute. We're gonna continue searching this way. Who is this? Here, I'll take over for a while.
Okay.
Oh! Yes, a lot of buzz going on here.
This is Franklin Dalton. How interesting. Same last name.
Yep, this is Frank Dalton. The grave of Frank Dalton. Frank, would you like to say something for the cameras?
Frank, we're here to take any messages you may want to say.
Was that you, Frank?
You say that again.
Frank, we want you to know that you are a legendary gunfighter. Frank, you're a Wild West legend. Oh, hello. Ah. Frank, you have a beautiful sign here. Nothing now. Went silent.
Frank, are you wanting to communicate with us?
I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Osmandius, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Thank you for coming with us today, everyone. We hope you will please remember the free gift the Great Spirit has given all of us. Not temporary riches which moth and rust consume, but the far greater and more precious gifts of caring and helping and sharing. Because when our last day comes, the only thing we'll have left is how we treated those around us.